NFL adding games. NFL add games inflation indicator. The NFL moved from 14 games to 16 games in 1978. The great inflation period of America was in the 1970s, but the bulk of it was in the late 1970s. And this is what you'll find in America when inflation is high. For some reason, the NFL always wants to add games to the schedule to make more money. The 1970s was the decade of inflation in the United States. While it may be surprising to some that the average inflation rate for the decade was, as a whole, was only 6.8%, this rate is doubled. This rate is double the long run historical average and nearly triple the rate of the previous 2 decades. In addition to the high average inflation rate, we were plagued by extremely variable inflation rates during the 70s. In both respects, the 1970s had much in common with the 1940s and were very different from the 1960s. In March 2021, 43 years later, the NFL moved from 16 games to 17 games, which transpired in conjunction with the infamous COVID pandemic and era inflation. After 4 decades of low US inflation, high inflation has emerged as a central economic problem of the COVID era. As of September 2022, the rate of CPI inflation over the previous 12 months was 8.2%. Cleveland Browns general manager Andrew Berry said the NFL teams are trying to push back the trade deadline. Oh, so this is new. I have to add, right? So let's backtrack a little bit. There's some articles from 1977. NFL has 2 games. This is from the New York Times. March 31st, 2021. NFL adds 17th regular game. Both New York Times. The Great Inflation. What caused high inflation during COVID era? And again, now in 2024, the NFL is trying to add an 18th game. So an 18-game regular season. This is new news, March 2024. Cleveland Browns general manager Andrew Berry said the NFL teams are trying to push back the trade deadline by 2 weeks, with 1 week being added due to the expanded 17-game schedule and another one in anticipation for the 18th regular season game to be eventually added. Inflation's still here to stay. Inflation's still sticky. And so that means the NFL is going to try to get its money. All right. And so this is from a tweet from the Kobesi letter, March 12, 2024. While CPI inflation is at 3.2%, inflation is much higher in many basic necessities. 1. Car insurance inflation, 20.6%. Wow. 2. Transportation inflation, 9.9%. Car repair inflation, 6.7%. Hospital services inflation, 6.1%. Homeowner inflation, 6%. Rent inflation, 5.8%. Food away from home inflation, 4.5%. Electricity inflation, 3.6%. Both core CPI and headline CPI came in hotter than expectations. This is the third straight month in both readings being hotter than expected. Markets have priced out 3 interest rate cuts in 2024 over the last 3 months. There might not be any interest rate cuts at this point. Affordability is still getting worse, which means the NFL wants to continue to add games because the bread and circus, people are going to be in the stands. And for some gematria, extra NFL games mean higher inflation, and NFL adds game when inflation goes high, both equal 333, 160 in ordinal, and 162 in reduction, and 162 for NFL adds game when inflation goes high, and reverse reduction. So you see the powerful connection here. And so I call it the NFL inflation indicator. If inflation is high, the NFL is going to add games. So I've been watching this for the last 4 decades. I haven't been alive for 4 decades, but I've went back and I've connected the dots, and it's just striking to me that this has been the case. But just keep that in mind. If you watch sports, you'll see extra things added to pull in more money.